Okay, so the very first thing you're going to want to do is there's switches right here, okay? And everything is labeled on this coach. So if you're looking for something, provided you know what you're looking for, you can find it. So this switch here says coach battery, and this says chassis battery. The chassis battery refers to the chassis of the vehicle and the engine. The coach batteries are the auxiliary batteries that deal with this big old box on the back. So what you want to do is push both of those to the on position, okay? This is auto level store, and these are compartment lights. We're not going to use the compartment lights right now, and we're not going to use the courtesy light because it's daylight. But if you're out here at 4 o'clock in the morning, you hit that, after you turn these on first, you hit the courtesy light, and then you can see your way through up to the driver's seat. Okay, underneath this step, there's a latch right here, and that's where your coach or auxiliary batteries are. And once a month, what you want to do is check the water level on those to make sure that they're up to where they're supposed to be. And the water level should be above the little lead fins inside those batteries. And then back here on the back, remember I said everything's labeled? That tells you exactly what's behind these little latch area. The automotive and coach circuit breakers and the battery mode solenoid and relays. I mean, you can read that, but that's where those are at. You shouldn't ever have to get to those unless something's drastically wrong. One important switch here, this is a switch for the steps, okay? You flip that bottom step up. Push on it to go in, or push on it to go out, and it'll make a little ratchet sound once it gets to the end. All right, so the next thing you do once you turn those two main switches on, the chassis batteries and the auxiliary batteries, you come on board here. Now you have to decide, okay, are you plugged into electric into the building, which is called the shoreline, or do you want to put the generator on? Now, let's say in this scenario, we're going to turn the generator on. Now, this is the slide switch that keeps both of these from going up, okay? Shoreline generator. Remember I said everything is labeled? Everything is labeled. Now, over here, in this this little box, there's the generator. Now when it's cold out, you want to push on the bottom of this rocker switch, which heats up the globe plug, because the generator works off of the diesel fuel from the main tank for this unit. And the pickup is only down to about a quarter of a tank. Now what I mean by that is, as long as you refill this diesel tank before you get to a quarter of a tank, the generator will run for forever until it runs out of fuel. And what I mean by that is, if you're parked out in some parking lot and the driver forgot to fill the diesel tank up and it runs below a quarter of a tank, well, when it gets to a quarter of a tank, the generator is going to shut off. That way, the generator won't run the tank completely dry and you can't drive home. Okay? So you push on the bottom of this, heat that globe plug up, and then push on the top. And now right now you heard it start pretty quick. That's only because I had it running to keep it warm inside for you all. If it's 0 degrees out, it may take 4 or 5 seconds of pushing on the top of that, but don't give up. Just push on the top of that rocker switch till it starts. Okay? Now you come over here and you notice the green light is on next to the generator. And these meters up here, this is the line voltage coming into the unit, and this is the load current of what is being used. If we were hooked up to a building, this slide switch would be in this configuration, and this rocker switch would be turned up, and you'd see 120 volts on this meter right here. That means there's 120 volts coming from the building out to the unit to keep it warm keep your temps up or down, however you want to view it, in your refrigerators for medicine or whatever the case may be. But my point is, this line voltage only is activated when you have electric current coming into it. Now, right now it doesn't say anything because, number one, we don't have a shore line. Number two, this generator switch is not flipped up. When I flip this up, you'll see that meter go up to 120 volts. Okay, so we now have 120 volts coming into this system. There's 120 volts on this side. These are called buses, bus A, bus B. Where the term bus comes from, I don't know, but I don't care. But it's just 240 volt system, but it's separated into two 120s, okay? And it's similar to your fuse panel in your house. You might have a 200 amp service, but you have it separated because you don't want to put everything on one circuit, because you turn everything on at once, it all blows. Okay, so the key point here is only turn on what you want to use. We're not going to turn the AC units on today because it's what, 45 degrees or 40 degrees? We don't need it. But we do want to turn the converter on first. The converter is, and I don't know why they say converter instead of charger, but it's a battery charger. So the generator is running and you're going to charge the auxiliary batteries that I notated earlier in the video on that switch, the second switch, auxiliary batteries and chassis batteries. This converter is going to charge the auxiliary batteries. Okay, so we turn the charger on. That's the first thing you want to turn on, because if you forget to turn that charger or converter on, you might be using a 12 volt system and it runs the batteries dead, and you'll notice, is it my eyes or are these lights getting dim? And then it'll dawn on you that, oop, I forgot to put that charger on, okay? All right, so that's all we're going to turn on here right now. Now, if you come over to this panel, this is a 12 volt DC system. Think of it as your car battery. It's direct current. It's 12 volt batteries. And this panel here is being operated off of those auxiliary batteries, or the coach batteries. These lights that are turned on right now, those are 12 volts. If I flip this main switch off, see, they go off. Those are 12 volts, they're not 110. So you turn this main switch on, and then again, keep in mind, you only want to turn on what you're going to use. Why turn it on if you're not going to use it? It just helps prevent problems in the future with your batteries, generator, etc., etc. Okay, so front room lights, middle room lights, rear room lights, front row under cabinet lights. Do we need them? Yeah, we're going to use them because they're pretty. Okay. Driver's side DS and passenger side PS exterior lights. We don't need those, so we're not going to turn them on. All right. Front and middle room valance lights, those are cool. I like those, so we'll turn those on. Rear valance, yeah, we'll do that. Step well light, we don't really need that, but we do need the HVAC thermostats, and I'll point those out in a couple minutes. Plumbing system, right now the plumbing system is winterized, so there's no water in the hot water tank, so we're not going to turn it on. And there's no reason to turn the pump on because there's no water. All right, now to finish this out, the speaker, amplifier, and TV antenna booster. That's nice, especially if you're out on the fringes of some signal. And I'll point out where the booster is, but it's over in this box over here. Oh, oops, sorry. Roof vents, we don't need those today, but in the summer, if you want to just, let's say it's 65 degrees or 70 degrees, and you want to have these roof vents on, and you say, how do you turn these on? And then it'll dawn on you, wait a minute, I need to flip that switch on. But we're not going to use it today. Refrigerator to keep your food warm, yeah, we'll put that on. Now, I don't know which refrigerator that's referring to, because there's a couple medicine type, I don't know the term for it, but there's a temp alert on those. So, all right, so that takes care of this 12 volt system. Now in this space here, I want to point out the switch for the generator, the start and the stop button for the generator. Right now it has 6.5 hours. We like to have between 5 and 10 hours of service on the generator before we deliver it, just to try and determine if there's any problems or not. This is the Polk audio system. This is the Viper Alert motion system that I mentioned earlier. The sensitivity is on these buttons. You can either make it more sensitive or less sensitive. Okay. And then this is that antenna booster. When the green light is on, then it's turned on and it's boosting the signal. Okay. All right, let's first start with these switches over here, and then we'll go across the dashboard and explain what everything is. This button right here, and again, I repeat myself, but there's a reason for that. Everything is labeled. This is a solar shade. This is the night shade. Now, it's not because you use it at night, it's just darker, okay? Now, if you notice the windshield, I'm going to push down on this solar shade, and all that means is that it comes down to that distance right there because the key is turned on, and the shade is smarter than the driver. It's telling you really don't want that shade all the way down because your key's in the ignition and you're driving down the road. But we turn that off, and then we can put that shade all the way down. The reason you hear that audible alert is because we have the step out and the buttons turned on and we have a bunch of stuff on. The only way to silence that particular alarm is to turn off the coach batteries in the back. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate the night shade, and all it is it's just a darker shade. Whoops, you go over there, and for some reason it got hung up. This switch right here is for the heats on the mirrors, and it's just the upper section. And once again, unless there's ice on it, there's no reason to turn that mirror heat on. Okay. This switch is just like a switch you'd see in your personal vehicle. It's left and right mirrors, up and down, left and right. It only refers to the upper section, not the bottom. The bottom is manually moved out. Now up here, this is the bright and dim switch, and this is just for the dash lights only. The bright and dim for the headlights is on the turn signal, just like you'd find on your car. This switch right here, it's the wipers. If you push on the top of this switch, it's the washer, and then this is just the speed at the operation of the wipers themselves. Okay. This battery boost. The scenario is this: you sat at a parking lot all day long, and somebody left the headlights on this vehicle, and they didn't mean to, but they left the headlights on all day long, and it ran the chassis battery dead, which means you can't start the engine of your vehicle. Well, what this switch allows you to do, there's a combiner switch underneath, and you don't have to know all about that at this time, but just know that that combiner switch underneath combines the battery charge from the auxiliary batteries and allows it to connect to the chassis batteries by pushing on this top of this button, and you hold it on for like 5 seconds, and then that juice, that electricity goes from the coach batteries to the chassis batteries and allows you to start the vehicle. And that way you can make your way home. This switch here is the exhaust brake. If you have an experienced truck driver, he'd know what that is. Especially going down hills is when you use this. It saves on the wear of your brake pads, and this just exhaust brake. It just back feeds the exhaust and helps slow the engine down. Fog lights, that's self-explanatory. And this is headlights. All right, same thing. This is a tilt wheel. there's a lever. You use your foot to push on it and then just adjust it to wherever you want it. It doesn't telescope, but it does tilt, okay? And there's a brake, an emergency brake here. This doesn't have air brakes on it. Now you notice that alarm going off, that means that that brake isn't on. So it's just helping you to determine, oh, I forgot to put the brake on. All right. This light here where it says jacks down, that refers to the computerized leveling system, and I'll explain that after we do the dash. Self-explanatory on the dash, the RPMs for the tach and the miles per hour. This green light in the middle, that's the cruise control, and it's operated on the turn signal here. All right. Also, I'm going to start this up. And what the driver wants to do, instead of letting it idle at 700 or 800 RPMs, you want to have a fast idle. And that fast idle is determined by turning the cruise control on and pushing on the end of this button for a second or two, and then let go of it, and the RPMs go up to 1,000 RPMs. And this what this does is it helps the exhaust system get rid of the particulates that is accumulated in that catalytic converter. All right. So you always want to have it on fast idle if you're just sitting in one place idling. See these 4 green vertical rectangles? That deals with the diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF, D-E-F, diesel exhaust fluid. That is injected into the system, mandated by the government to help reduce emissions in the exhaust. Rule of thumb is for every 50 gallons of diesel fuel you use 1 gallon of DEF. I'll show you where the DEF tank is when we go outside. Next to this menu here, these are operated by these 2 gray buttons, and it's a menu system. You just push it to determine what you want to do, and the driver can play with those buttons to determine how to use them. The diesel fuel gauge, and then this is the coolant gauge over here. This is a step warning that indicates that the step is out, so don't drive away. And if this one's lit, that means the slide out is out. Don't drive away. Okay, now to come back to this computerized leveling system, I would rather they not say leveling system, because leveling has a connotation that you can level it up when you're on the side of a hill in a parking lot. It should be a stabilizer system. But the point is, there's a green light right here that says travel mode. When that green light is lit, you're able to drive down the road with no problem. But what we're going to do now for demonstrational purposes, we're going to hit this auto level button. Oh, here we go.
Will the auto leveling work with the slide out and the steps out?
Ask me that again.
Will the auto level work if you have the slide out and the steps out?
Well, you don't want to put the slide out until you put the supports down.
Okay.
Okay, I just didn't push it hard enough. Now what's happening is, okay, that's the 4th one. And these red lights indicate when they are deployed completely. Okay, so all 4 red lights on all 4 corners are lit. Now what the driver has to do now is go out and verify that the tires aren't up off the ground. Now I would venture to say, because we're, it was sloped down and sloped to the right, that the wheels are up off the ground. Now what the driver has to do, go out and look at that, and then push these down a little bit. You don't want the tires off the ground. Once again, this is a stabilizing system and not a leveling system to where it's completely level. What you want to try and do when you go to a parking lot is find a level location, or hopefully where they want you to set up, it's going to be more level than sitting on the side of a hill. All right, right here on this panel, which is just above the door, Here's an AC thermostat, and this deals with the AC unit in this particular middle room. There's 3 of them. There's a front, a middle, and a rear. This one deals with the middle unit. This is the slide out switch. This is the awning control, in and out, and then this is a remote awning control, and I'll demonstrate those here shortly. But for right now, we're going to open the slide out, and the slide out is over here on the passenger or the driver's side. One thing you want to make sure of is before you operate this slide out is that you're not close to a sign, a tree branch, or a building. Volume control. Front diesel heater. That means there's a heater that runs off the diesel fuel in the tank. This gets very hot. If you want it smoking hot in here, this is the way to do it. Otherwise, just use the wall heaters and the tow heaters. All right. Volume control, heater thermostat. This is for the tow heaters that are at your tow level. All right. And then the wall heater, I'll point that out. But a comfortable zone, you'll learn where a comfortable zone is, but usually you start in the middle. This switch here is just for the lights overhead, low, mood lighting, or bright because you want to inspect something, you know. All right, this monitoring system here, I don't have the water pump system turned on the main panel, so we can't test it. But if I turn that on, now you see these are lit up. That tells you how much, what kind of level of substance is in whichever tank, whether it's fresh water, the holding tank, you know, the gray tank, or the battery of the coach batteries. Okay. And this is the pump, but there's no water in the system. Okay, there's 3 things you want to do each month. You want to clean these filters. There's 3 of them for each, one for each AC unit. You just take a screwdriver, take this off, and then take the filter out, and you can clean it out, whether you blow it out with air or wash it out with water. Make sure you dry it completely before you put it back in if you wash it with water. The other thing, you want to check the batteries and the water level, whether they're the auxiliary batteries or the chassis batteries. And then the other thing is you want to lubricate the step, okay, because the salt and all the junk that's on the roadways. Okay, what you see here is a bank of switches just like you saw on the front, and I pointed out. Similar thing, the volume control for the radio, okay, HDMI input, rocker switch for the bright and dim lights, step in and step out button. I demonstrated that on the outside. Well, this is just the inside version of that. HDMI port, or no, this is Cat 6, and then a 110 receptacle. The handrail's right there for your step. It's strapped in right there right now. And then you see the back side of the water. An example where it says no storage. Don't put stuff in there even though there's a big old space. That generates heat. And this is your inverter. I did forget to mention that. Now what the inverter does, it takes 12 volts from the 12 volt battery and converts it to 110. So you can use a laptop or whatever the case may be. But the downside is that will only last as long as there's a charge in your battery. If you don't resupply voltage to the battery from some source, like a charger or a converter, then the inverter is only going to last for such a long time until the battery's dead, and then that's it. So you want to use that sparingly, and there's no reason to use the inverter if you have the generator running, and it's providing 110 volts or 120 volts anyway. These are thermal circuit breakers, which means if there's a low voltage, it's going to trip this circuit breaker. Low voltage means high amperage, and high amperage means high heat. So there's a reason that it trips it. Now, if it's only once that it trips, then you just reset it and go on. If it continually trips the circuit breaker, then there's a problem. Everything is marked, just like always. One's labeled generator, and you can look back in there and see, but they're all labeled. Look here. I mean, it's hard for the camera to see it, but this latch isn't latched. You just put your knee against it and push in on it. That's the nature of these cabinet doors. In that black bag, there's a CD that has the manuals on it, and then there's a remote in there also. This is nothing really other than a blower, but there's no storage, okay? Here's your storage. This is where your shore line is. And this is a 100 amp service that plugs into the building, okay? And so a 100 amp service will run everything, the furnace, everything. AC units, all three. I think I don't know if it may be 15 feet, maybe 20 feet. But you can take a 100 amp service, it will run everything. 50 amp service will only run half of that. And then a 30 amp service will only run the converter and battery charger. So this is your wastewater tank and the dump right there, and I'll point out where the hose is. And then there's a compartment heater to keep this compartment heated in the winter months, to keep it from freezing once you put water into that system. Okay, these are the chassis batteries. This is the batteries for the engine. I don't know if you remember, but over underneath the steps is where the auxiliary batteries are for the box, the coach. These levers here, these are the pressure levers. In the event something happens and one of your foot pads doesn't come down, you take the pressure off by flipping that up, and that takes the pressure off. And there are springs on both sides of that ram that help pull it back up into position so you can drive down the road. But I've never known of anybody that had any problems with it. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but that's how you release the pressure from that hydraulic system. Okay, on the outside of this building, diesel exhaust fluid only on that door. And this is where the diesel exhaust or DEF reservoir tank is. Okay. That's about a 12-gallon tank, I think. 10 or 12-gallon tank. And they come in 2.5-gallon containers. So, again, like I said, for every 50 gallons of diesel fuel, you usually burn 1 gallon of this stuff. So, you have 4 of them on hand and you're fine. But the driver should keep track that, hey, when it gets down to only one of those green rectangles is left, you need to fill it up, because if they don't pay attention to that, it'll go from green to yellow, and then it'll reduce the power in the engine. And then if you still don't pay attention, it'll go from yellow to red, and it'll reduce the power even more to where you can only go like 15 miles an hour. So that's one of the no-brainers. You know, if you get down and you only have 2 bars left, fill it up. This is as far as that hood goes. But you have the coolant reservoir here, engine oil input, you have the dipstick, for the engine oil, and then the dipstick and the transmission oil inlet or filler neck is right here, and there's a dipstick for the transmission somewhere.